The NFL has a tight end problem, at least hitting on them in the first round. If we ignore the generational Brock Bowers from last year, since the last objectively big hit, Greg Olsen to the Chicago Bears in 2007, we've had 13 first-round tight ends who have underperformed. This has transpired during the golden age of tight end play with Travis Kelce, Rob Gronkowski, and George Kittle, but they were drafted in the 3rd, 2nd, and 5th rounds respectively. The NFL cannot figure out how to properly draft tight ends in the first round. This year, we have Penn State's Tyler Warren and Michigan's Colston Loveland projected in the top 32. But it's hard not to be skeptical about their prospective careers when there have been so many Kyle Pitts, the O.J. Howards, the slam dunk next thing, with so little to show for it. A main reason for this failure, tight ends are basically 2 positions in one. If you're on the ball, you need to learn the entire run game, combo blocks with the tackles, when you're pulling, when you're arcing through the formation, even if you're off the ball, when you're running split zone action and pulling across the formation, the angles, leverage, the splits on the line, pass protections, chipping, blitz pickups. You have to learn to be an offensive lineman when offensive linemen spend their entire 24/7 season learning to be just that. But then also, of course, you're a receiver too. That part of the playbook, you need to work your releases, learn the route combos, when you're going to keep running or sit down, learn blitzes, different motions. The tight end position is a lot to put on just one player. It's for my money the most underrated position in the league. It's the most misunderstood as well, because based on how defenses, defend the position plays a major part in how effective a tight end's career will be. For many offenses, 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 2 receivers is the most successful, efficient personnel grouping in terms of expected points added, because it's the most versatile personnel group where you can easily switch between run or pass. 11 personnel has been the NFL's go-to for quite some time. That's 1 back, 1 tight end, and 3 receivers. But that sends a much clearer signal you're going to pass the ball with all those receivers, since you have just 1 tight end to block if you're running. Which is why we've seen a Cooper Kupp type become so valuable. He's also an incredible blocker, so even though he's a wide receiver, he almost acts as a pseudo tight end. In 12 personnel, you can put your 2 tight ends on the line and run the ball. Or if you have a versatile tight end or 2 to split out, you can now technically have 4 wideout options. When you have 2 tight ends on the field, they're denoted with the letters Y and H, and here's what that means. The wide tight end is typically on the ball in the core as it's known, think Gronk or Kittle, and his job is to be more of a complete tight end where he's blocking and running routes. Then the H tight end, the move tight end, is typically off the ball. You can split him outside, motion him. He's more of a wide receiver, not as much a blocker. In my opinion, another main problem with the past decade plus of first round tight end failures is that too many of them are H move tight ends and aren't capable of the blocking part of the position, so defenses play them differently. The idea is that in 12 personnel, the defense is forced to match with their base personnel, meaning only 4 defensive backs, corners, or safeties to defend all the heavy bodies. Defenses are scared of getting run on over and over again. So against that heavier base defense, teams with that classic tight end, the Gronk or Kittle, can then flex out their tight end into a wide receiver role and force a matchup with a bigger body on defense to guard them in space. Defenses typically match 12 personnel with base, because as I said, we gotta stop the run. But if Gronk or Kittle are tearing you up outside, you could match with nickel personnel, where you swap out one of your big linebackers for another defensive back to match up with the speed of the tight end. But then the offense can just keep both tight ends in and pound your now lighter defense up the middle. This is where I think the first round tight end has gone wrong. The Kyle Pitts, the Eric Ebrons, the Evan Ingrams, these guys are not good blockers, so a defense can still match 12 personnel with nickel instead of base, and just treat your new first round tight ends like a wide receiver, nullifying the advantage you get from being a tight end. This is the dilemma with Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. Can they break the mold of the H-move tight ends that keep failing? First, Tyler Warren, to be honest, does project as an H, not a Y, but there's also a lot to like about him. At 6'5", 257, he's a bit bigger for a tight end. Size-wise, he's literally identical to Travis Kelce coming out. And this year, Warren exploded as a do-it-all receiving threat in Penn State's offense, leading the entire nation with 104 catches for 1,233 yards and 8 touchdowns. He has good size, great power, really good hands, and if you want to see a difference maker, turn on the USC film where he tore him cheeks up for 17 catches, 224 yards, played multiple snaps from the Wildcat, threw passes too. In the first drive alone, they threw him 5 screens, a QB sneak, and he finished it off with a touchdown. He's got a good catch radius due to his size. Like I said, very sure-handed catching the ball in traffic. He'll run you over with yards after the catch. He'll run over the middle to catch the ball, no worries. And he could be a dynamic big H move tight end, a joker as Sean Payton likes to call it. And the way Penn State was willing to put Warren in space shows that he's a promising potential threat outside. For example, they sent him on a slot fade here. This is really a route that's designed for a wide receiver to be able to win with speed, away from the defender and one high safety. So it's pretty crazy that Penn State gives him this route, and that he's capable of pulling the ball down with the body control to catch it back shoulder. While the point of this week's episode is to delve into finding a true wide tight end who can block and you can split out, even if Warren doesn't end up as a Y, who do you put on him? A nickel cornerback is too small, a safety is too, and a linebacker is too slow. There's a lot of potential in him as a prospect, just really, he's a wide receiver and not as much a tight end. That's because when he blocks, he's just not effective. This is a critical block in any wide zone scheme where the running back starts to Warren's side. Warren's job is to demolish the end outside to create a lot of space and potential cutback lanes. But with his big size and lack of bendability in his body, he strikes too high, gets stood up, and doesn't gain any ground. For his bigger size, he's not a mover of men, and that's why I worry about him kicking inside as a true Y and becoming that threat where defenses don't know whether to play base or nickel, which is exactly where Colston Loveland comes into play. He's a bit smaller at 6'5", 245, but much more the prototypical size tight end, similar to a Pat Freiermuth and many others at the position. Loveland didn't have the same explosive receiving stats, just 56 catches for 582 yards and 5 touchdowns, but he's much better at blocking than Warren, and does project as more of a wide tight end based on his skill set. He doesn't play nearly as big as Warren, but he's a good athlete, has a nice catch radius, and is definitely a better route runner than the other, specifically against zone coverage. Here Loveland is bumped inside into the slot, and against 2 high safeties, this route is supposed to be converted to attack the space in between the 2 safeties up through the post. But watch how Loveland reads the coverage in the down, and since the safeties are both so tight together, he gets skinny, cutting his route off flatter, and becomes really friendly to the quarterback so that he can make an easier throw. I like him more as a blocker than Warren. He has good hand placement, he uses his leverage and body positioning better despite his smaller frame, and I believe he can play Y, despite the fact that he's not going to demolish anybody and throw anybody back. My only knock on him is how inconsistent he is. One play later, he got his ass kicked on a block, and that was always his problem. Play to play, he can be polar opposites. Earlier in this game, there was a 2-play sample of back-to-back plays where I wrote down bad catch in traffic, and the very next play, awesome catch in traffic. Of course, it makes sense that both players have their flaws. They're still so young. Warren has a lot of work to do if he wants to be a true wide tight end, and some of his route crispness and agility could be improved. And Loveland, as I said, just maybe doesn't have as high a ceiling, and isn't yet a consistent down-in, down-out player. NFL front offices have struggled to draft tight ends in the first round in the last 2 decades, and now we have 2 of them staring right at us dead in the face. With the more recent group at the position struggling as move tight ends, it gives me pause on Tyler Warren, even though I do like him more as a prospect. Loveland can be that wide tight end, he's better inside, so defenses will be forced into base personnel when he's on the field, and then you can flex him outside as a wide receiver and have him torment a poor linebacker. But, once again, he's just not as dynamic as Warren is. The 2 tight ends are very different players who you're gonna draft to do very different things. If you want a move tight end a la Travis Kelce, give me Tyler Warren. And if you want the prototype, give me Colston Loveland. One of these two will hopefully hit to break the trend of what's happened in the past. And if you find the right guy, your offense with the right tight end will become incredibly versatile and impossible to defend.